This episode of the Cult Popture podcast was brought to you by our Patreon. If you want to tell us which films we should watch or get 2 extra exclusive podcasts a month, then please consider becoming a patron and joining us at www.patreon.com/cultpopture.
Here we go now. Shibuya. Shibuya. Roll call. My name is AJ. Yeah, I like to party. Yeah, and when I shake it, yeah, the boys say, "Hey, mummy." Shibuya. Shibuya.
My name is Richard.
Yeah.
And I'm the bad boy
of
the podcast.
Hell yeah.
So I'm not going to play along with this because I'm too cool for it.
You are too cool. Hey everybody, and welcome along to the Cult Popture podcast. This is our first episode on the Little Empire podcast network. So if you're an old listener, this is going to be a bit more entry level than some of our previous episodes, particularly the 12-hour Marvel Cinematic Universe episode, a bit more entry level than that. And if you're a new listener, welcome. And we hope you enjoy the next however long we talk about what we're going to talk about. You have tuned into. I'm AJ, by the way, if you missed that at the start. And
I am
intro.
Richard, and I am the bad boy. That was not.
Yeah, no.
That was 100% accurate. So
that was not a joke. Yeah,
just get ready for that. Like, if you're like, well, this boy's pretty bad.
Did he really?
I did warn you.
He was the bad boy.
That I don't give a stuff.
So you've tuned into our flagship fortnightly show film franchise, Fortnights. This is something we do every fortnight where we watch an entire movie series or franchise, and then we get together and discuss it. We share our thoughts. We talk about any fun behind the scenes trivia or observations we had. We pitch our own sequel ideas, and then at the end we'll be rolling a figurative roulette wheel to decide what our next film in the franchise will be, or what our next film franchise will be.
Yeah.
So that could be anything. We've got a whole list on a whole Google Doc of franchises, so it could be anything from the 5 Pirates of the Caribbean movies to the Stuart Little trilogy to the 23 Amityville horror movies. Did you know there are 23 of them now?
Yes, because I'm the one that wrote that on the list.
No, it says 18 on the list. I had to update it. There have been that many in the past 2 years since we added it to the list.
I do not believe you.
Well, I counted twice to make sure I didn't count wrong. But before we get too far down the rabbit hole of talking about a different franchise, this episode that you've tuned into now, we're going to be talking about the 6 films in the Bring It On series, which is a franchise that focuses on the life and times of competitive cheerleading. These films started in 2000, and the most recent sequel came out in 2017.
Yeah, you're right.
Yep. I'm right. Richard, if any preconceived opinions on cheerleading before we watch these
on
films?
Cheerleader, I thought you were going to say on Bring It On. Before this, I just thought that cheerleaders were a bunch of one-dimensional, basic white girls that were the popular kids at school, have never had to struggle in their life, and now, boy, has my appreciation for cheerleaders just skyrocketed. I do also want to take this opportunity as being the longest I've spoken so far on this podcast. Mm-hmm. This episode specifically, I've spoken for much longer in the past, but I am just coming off having a cold, so I don't normally sound like this. Or maybe I do, but I think I feel slightly different than usual. Okay. So if you hate my voice, and you're a new listener, stick around for another episode.
Or go listen to the 6-hour Marvel Phase 3 episode.
And if you don't like it, I don't care. Because
if you like this one more.
Because I'm a bad boy.
So the first film in the series was called Bring It On. That came out in 2000. It was directed by Peyton Reed. And a way that we kind of gauge what the general consensus is for each movie that we cover on this podcast is we go to a little website called Rotten Tomatoes, which, if you don't know, aggregates critical opinion on different films. So Richard, what do you think Rotten Tomatoes, what is the Rotten Tomatoes score for Bring It On?
66.
It is 63%. which means that 63% of critics who watched it gave it above a 5 out of 10, which is a very confusing way to rate a film, but there you go. 63%, that's like a low good movie, like a not that great but okay movie.
Yeah, because 60% is the threshold for what they call being either fresh or rotten.
Yeah.
So 60, above 60 is, it's still worth watching.
Yeah, and it has a 66% audience score, which is what, you and me could rate.
Which is why I
review
said
it.
66. Because I'm more tapped into the zeitgeist than what those pretentious critics kind of think.
Yeah. Usually we don't necessarily say the audience score as well as the critic score, but if a film can be, if we cover a lot of obscure sequels on this show, and so a lot of them don't have Rotten Tomatoes scores, and you'll find that out with with this series. So 66% audience score. Remember that. And Richard, what is Bring It On 2000 about?
Okay, Bring It On 2000, the full title. So we meet Torrance, who is played by Kirsten Dunst. She is a cheerleader, and she is elected to be the new cheer captain when the former captain Big Red, graduates and goes off to college. So one of their teammates breaks their leg. Her name is Carver, but she's not really important to the story. And so they hold auditions to replace them, and they get Missy, who, much like myself, is kind of like the bad boy of cheerleading, except she's a girl. So when we meet her, she's a total bad girl, doesn't care about cheerleading at all, but she's good at gymnastics, so the Venn diagram of skills has a massive kind of crossover. You don't really need to focus on the fact that she's the bad girl because it doesn't really come up again. But she, after joining the team and seeing the Toros, that's the team, their routines, she realizes that all of their she shows Torrance essentially that all of their cheers were stolen from a rival team, which is made up of African Americans and Latino, Hispanic girls. And
from East Compton.
The East Compton Clovers, who are led by ISIS.
Yeah. That's the character's name.
Yeah, the character, not the terrorist organization.
Or the Egyptian goddess.
Yeah,
That would be an interesting movie, though.
Yeah. So this starts a rivalry between the Taurus and the Clovers, which goes all the way up to national championships. The Clovers, they sort of, they're too poor to go to nationals, but they win the prize money from an Oprah-like figure who grew up in the same, or is an alumni of their school. So they get to go to nationals, and they eventually win, and the Taurus come in second place. So it completes the rags to riches story for the Clovers, and the Taurus are humbled by coming in second place, but now they've grown as people.
Yeah.
And it's a very moving story.
Yeah, developed as characters just in time for us to never see any of them again in the rest of the series. So this movie makes Bring It On our second franchise in a row to feature at least one film directed by Peyton Reed. He directed Ant-Man and Ant-Man and the Wasp from the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which we covered last month. However, this is our third time discussing his work on Cult Popture, as he also directed a lot of the Back to the Future animated series, which we covered on our Patreon. A quick little Patreon plug up top for our new listeners. We're already trying to get money out of you. This is also our second Kirsten Dunst franchise after Spider-Man.
Very cool. So if any of those sound good, check them out. They're of varying quality.
Much like these films. All right, so Bring It On Again, 2004. This was directed by Damon Santostefano. It has no critic score on Rotten Tomatoes. Bring It On Again. It doesn't have a critic score. I thought at least the second one would. But it does have a 37% audience score, so a pretty hefty drop from 66 from the last film.
Yeah, to not existing.
Yeah, no, the audience
am I
score.
right to assume that no more of these films have critic scores?
You would be incorrect to assume that.
Really? Does the one with Hayden Panettiere have one?
It does. So what is Bring It On Again about? Again? How do you pronounce that?
I'm not going to pick a side. So our main character this time was called Whittier.
So weird, right?
Yeah.
That's not a name.
So
Whittier, it kind of rhymes with like Lydia, but it's not spelt like
yeah,
that.
Whittier. Yeah, it's weird. Like, there's sometimes you mishear it in the film, and yeah, it's very strange.
It's as weird of a name as Damon Santon Stefano.
So yeah, she is starting at college, and so presumably they wanted to do this with Kirsten Dunst.
Yeah,
I would assume. But so Whittier starts a new college and joins the cheer squad. The squad is ruled by the tyrant Tina, who eventually becomes so controlling that Whittier and her friend Monica leave the squad, starting their own team of ragtag misfits, who's made up from, like, because they value the cheer squad so much because they won 7 times, so they keep that program and get rid of, like, drama and all those ones that no one cares about. So all the drama students and all these people who hated cheerleaders form this squad who inexplicably win nationals, and then Tina's like, oh, I want in on this, and then Whittier's like, yeah, sweet.
They don't win nationals, they win the chance to represent that college at nationals.
Okay.
So much like how you never see the High School Musical in High School Musical, you never actually see the ultimate, like, competition in this film.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah. And then we never see these characters again after that.
Exactly.
So this film makes this our second franchise in a row in which the phrase "whatever it takes" is adopted as somewhat of a mantra by the characters in this film, or in the films. Again, this is after the MCU, because "whatever it takes" was one of the taglines for Avengers Endgame. This film was also co-written by Brian Gunn and Mark Gunn, who are the brother and cousin of James Gunn, who directed the 2 Guardians of the Galaxy films. What do you think about that?
That's pretty funny. I believe I'm the one that pointed it out to you.
You are.
As well. One thing about this, I didn't mention it in the first film or in this film, and I don't think I'm going to mention it for any of the other films, but they all have, like, these love stories, often involve cheating, or some kind of, sneaking around behind each other's back. Like, I've got a boyfriend, but this guy's super cute. And then eventually it all turns out okay. But the one in this film is so dirty looking. He's, like, got this, like, gross unwashed blonde hair and, like, this disgusting stubbly little goatee.
Soul patch,
and there's which she starts at the college, and there's it's orientation, and she looks over at this guy and he looks at her, and I was like, oh, that's gonna be, the creepy villain who hits on her. And then she goes over and is, like, twirling her hair and so, like, flustered around him, and I was like, wait, is that guy supposed to be attractive? And I was watching it with Jess, who's my girlfriend for new listeners who don't know that. And I was like, and it took us ages to find out. I was like, wait, Jess, is this guy attractive? And she was like, no. And I was like, okay. She thinks he's attractive, though. So what's happening?
You're starting to sound a bit like the film's villain, Richard, who also doesn't think he's attractive and also doesn't think that Whittier should be with him.
Well, one thing I actually kind of liked about this film, from memory, and I could be getting it confused with another film because these are all the exact same. I actually quite liked Tina in this film, I think. She was kind of my favorite, or like my favorite villain in the sense that she was, like, the least villainy, or maybe she was the most well developed.
Yeah. And
I sort of sympathized with her the most, I think.
Sure.
Maybe from memory.
All right. Well, 2006. It's now. Close your eyes, Richard. It's now 2006. Can you picture it?
Yes. I'm just starting high school.
Oh, cool. Bring It On, All or Nothing comes out.
Oh my god, who are you?
This film was directed by Steve Rash. What do you think this has on Rotten Tomatoes?
Oh, like 20%.
20% critic score, you're right. The audience score, though, is 70%, making it the highest rated in the whole series in terms of audience.
It's like, because, this one, as I mentioned briefly before, it stars Hayden Panettiere of Heroes fame.
I'm so glad you said her surname first.
Yeah, Hayden Panettiere, I think, is
Panettiere,
yeah. She's also from A Bug's Life. She voices
And Remember the Titans?
Yeah, and I Love You, Beth Cooper.
Yep. And Nashville.
And I can't remember any other things she's in. But anyway,
I think that's an accurate description of Hayden Panettiere. She was kind of like the it girl for a very short period of time.
Yeah, it was like she was about to blow up because of Heroes, and then Heroes kind of bombed and it never really went
Yeah.
anywhere. Because, she's in Scream 4 as well, actually.
Ah, true. Yeah, she was too. All right. What is Bring It On All or Nothing about, though, Richard?
So Hayden Panettiere plays Brittany, who's your typical, what I thought a cheerleader was before watching these films. She's the rich white girl on top of the world, thanks to her dad's money, but then her dad loses his job, forcing the family to move to kind of a disadvantaged city is how Wikipedia describes it. So she moves to a high school where she is more or less the only white girl, and she meets Camille, who is the cheerleading captain, played by Solange Knowles, or Solange, I don't know, Beyonce's sister. But Hayden Panettiere, Brittany, has already vowed to never cheer for another team. So she starts cheering for another team. And then Rihanna, like the singer Rihanna playing herself.
At the height of her early career.
Yeah, so this is If It's Lovin' That You Want / Ponder Replay. She doesn't appear on set in the film. Just kind of appears in a bunch of cutaway shots. There is two very brief shots where she's like in front of a crowd, and I think she does interact with the leads at one point. But anyway, she has announced this TV special where squads will go up against each other, and then Brittany finds out her boyfriend's cheating on her with the girl who she vowed she would never cheer again to, and so then she's like, "Well, I'm going to get them back." So they start taking the whole national or whatever Rihanna's thing seriously. And then Brittany has the amazing idea. She's like, guys, you guys have this special skill and we need to use it if we're going to win this thing. Guys, you're crumping. We need a crump.
It's 2006, baby, and crumping is relevant. We're going to do a movie about crumping and cheerleading.
And so the final thing ends up being Brittany's new school versus her old one, and they win because the new school wins because Rihanna's a big fan of crumping, and she judges based not on where they came from, but the power of the crump. So they get to
much to Winnie's chagrin.
Yeah. And so they get to be in the background of a video for Ponder Replay,
which closes out the film.
Yeah.
So Bring It On All or Nothing makes the Bring It On franchise our second one to feature a film directed by Steve Rash, who also directed American Pie Presents Band Camp. And speaking of band camps, or camps in general, and Steve Rash in general, 2007 brought us Bring It On, In It to Win It, also directed by Steve Rash. No critic score on Rotten Tomatoes, but a 70% audience score, so, the fans of All or Nothing were really in it for In It to Win It.
Yeah. Okay, so In It to Win It. This one is... So this one stars Ashley Benson from, I want to say, Pretty Little Liars. There's two rival squads. This is getting very light on my synopses. Two rival squads, the Sharks and the Jets, are forced to work together because of plot reasons. Spirit Stick goes missing, which are like really important in these films. They eventually team up. They put half of their teams together, and they team up as the East-West Coast Shits.
It's so fun. They're like, when they team up, they're like, all right, I was thinking maybe the East-West Spirits as a name, which I was like, yeah, because the Spirit Stick is like the MacGuffin of this film. And then they act like that's the worst idea ever, and then they settle on the East-West Shits, which you couldn't, that's such a bad name. It sounds like the Shits, like the East-West Shits is the name of their new team.
And then they so they create. They're at like a theme park, and
they're at a camp. They're at a cheer camp, which for some reason takes place at like Universal Resort. Like, it's so weird. Like, because these are Universal movies, as in the company that distributed them. Not their acclaim. They're like the way they reach people. You know, they're not
They don't
universal
have universal
in that sense.
acclaim.
Yeah. And so I'm assuming they were like, right, it's set at a camp, and they're like, well, we could use Universal's resort for free probably. And it's like, how much are these people paying for their cheerleader kids to go to this? Like, there's like a roller coaster there, there's like all these theme park attractions. It's crazy.
Yeah, well, because there's one of those things that's like it's like a roller coaster where they like flip over as they. It's very hard to describe without if you can't see my hands. Which most of you can't. In fact, there's only one person right now in the world who can see my hands,
and I'm not listening to you.
There's no one else I would rather have look at my hands. But anyway, where they kind of like they cross over and flip at the same time, and they're like, we have to do that. And they're like, no, it's impossible. And then there's a training montage of them learning this move that isn't very visually impressive and doesn't seem very hard to do. But they managed to pull it off for the finals, and then they win. This movie was pretty tough to get through. This was the one that I was like, oh man, this must have like 5 minutes to go. And I'd literally been watching it for 40 minutes.
Yeah.
It had like almost an hour to go.
My illegal stream of this movie stopped working, and it paused for about 10 minutes. And after I waited for it to load and then played it again, I couldn't remember what I was watching. I couldn't remember what was happening in the story. So this film ends with a music video, again, much like the Rihanna one did. But this one is a song called He Said, She Said by Ashley Tisdale, making Bring It On our third Ashley Tisdale franchise, following High School Musical and Scary Movie, because she's the hero of Scary Movie 5.
Yeah. But it's not just completely random that she appears in this. Her sister is in this film, Jennifer Tisdale.
Yeah. Then in 2009, so 2 years later, we got Bring It On, Fight to the Finish. This was directed by Billy Woodruff. This is no critic score on Rotten Tomatoes, but it does have a 64% audience score, meaning it was ranked lower than In It to Win It and All or Nothing, despite the fact that I think it's much better than both of those films. So there we go. What is it about? Before we get into opinions.
So this is
before
what
we
I've
let
written.
opinions.
This is what I've written. Somehow it's the longest one, but I also barely remember what it is about. I remember that it starts quite stylized in the way it's shot and colored, and I was like, oh cool, they're doing something different. And then the sort of the main cast is Latino, Hispanic, and there's a plot, and then they win at nationals.
There's a rival school. It's the main character. It's very similar to the plot for All or Nothing and Hayden Panettiere's one, where the main character moves from Malibu to she moves to Malibu from West California or something like that.
Yeah, it's a fish out of water story.
Yeah, and creates the team there, and they're basically challenging the high school's title for their main cheerleading squad, which is also the same thing that happened in Bring It On again.
Yeah, and then they win by doing a routine to Whoa-Oh by Forever the Sickest Kids, and it's the weirdest song choice I've ever seen in a film. It's like not at all teased throughout the film that it's like, hey, let's do this obscure emo song from 2009 by FTSK, as fans like myself would refer to them as. But yeah, Forever the Sickest Kids. Very, very strange song choice.
Okay, so this the director of this film, Billy Woodruff, he might end up being the subject of a statistic for a future episode, Richard, because outside of this film, he directed all 4 Honey films. You know, the Jessica Alba movie, Honey?
Oh, yeah.
There's 4 of them, and he directed all of them.
Nice. I have only seen the first one, and his direction was not noteworthy to me.
So, Bring It On returned 8 years later. They took an 8-year hiatus, and they came back with Bring It On Worldwide #CheerSmack. The correct title being Bring It On Worldwide #CheerSmack. The omission of the hash symbol on the Wikipedia page is due to technical restrictions. Our first film, I think, that's had a hashtag in the title that we've covered.
Yeah.
This was directed by Robert Adituyi. It has no critic score on Rotten Tomatoes and 8% audience score, the lowest audience score by a country mile. This is a why did this exist movie. This is a why did they make this kind of movie.
But it does have a solid theory as to why it was created.
Sure.
Well, I mean, I have a solid theory anyway.
Okay, well, we'll tell us what it's about first.
Okay,
and then
well,
let us know why you think it was created.
This one is like simultaneously the most interesting sequel, but also like one of the worst movies I've ever seen.
It's same way. It's an interesting sequel in the same way Jurassic World: Fallen Kingdom was an interesting sequel.
Yeah, because it's
like, oh yeah, they did something different. It was worse, but they did something different.
Yeah. So our main character is a girl called Destiny, who is like this worldwide celebrity in the world of cheerleading. So it opens. She's doing her fucking routine at some nationals or regionals or whatever they are, and then on screen appears the Truth, who is like anonymous, the internet people that wear the Guy Fawkes masks,
the internet terrorist group.
Yeah,
terrorist
if I misrepresented you, Anonymous, please don't dox me if you're listening to this. But anyway, they wear these masks and they're like, Destiny, we're taking you down, and then the whole world turns on Destiny, including the cheer goddess, played by Vivacia A. Fox, or Vivica.
Our second Vivacia A. Fox franchise after Kill Bill.
Yeah, I'm not actually sure how to say her first name. I hope that's right. But yeah, she does like these daily or weekly, whatever, webcasts where people can Skype in or call in, and the
world of this film is very generous to how much people care about cheerleading.
She like calls out Destiny on this. It's like, this is just some kid, and you're like a god to these people.
That's what a cheer smack is. It's like calling out another cheerleader on a worldwide scale.
It's like a fatwa.
Yeah.
It's like a cheer fatwa.
Bring it on, worldwide fatwa.
And then she tells the whole world to hate Destiny, who's just some kid who's got her own, insecurities and is just trying to make it through life. But Destiny then gets like a street gang to join her squad. And then at the spoilers for Bring It On worldwide #cheersmack, it turns out that the Truth was her squad somehow, and they didn't like her. And then
it was her entire squad as well. Like, every other supporting character was a villain at the start of this movie, and it's like it's almost Get Out levels of like, like he finds out that everyone in Get Out is against him.
Yeah, like a secret society that's like, yeah. But it's a very strange movie, and the world of it is ridiculous. But it does end with like, throughout the world, it's like a simulcast of a cheer competition, and it cuts to like Australia and Germany and South Africa, and they all have like their own cheer squads, and it seems to me that this film was very clearly made to be, have your cheer squad feature in a Bring It On film, and we're going to make one specifically to work around that. I don't know why they chose the cheer goddess and the Truth to be the film surrounding that, but yeah, they got all these international cheer squads to record their routine, and then a shot of them being disappointed at not winning.
Yeah, so if you want to know what the Truth, these anonymous cheerleaders, look like, but you don't want to watch the movie, head on over to our Instagram @cultpopture, where I took a photo of them. We take photos of the movies that we watch, so there you go. So this film makes Bring It On our second franchise, in which the first 5 films in the series open with a horrific dream sequence after Final Destination, of which there are only 5 of. But
this film, as soon as it started, I was like, it's committed the cardinal sin of Bring It On. Like,
yeah, it didn't start with a dream sequence.
With a dream sequence. And
well, it's interesting you say that because it does seem to be aware that it's a combo breaker.
Yeah, because she's like, this must be a nightmare, and someone goes, "You're not dreaming," and I was like, well, then I'm fucking turning this movie off.
If this was it kind of reminded me of how this is the funniest comparison, but it kind of reminded me how Casino Royale didn't start with James Bond walking in the gun barrel, and it wasn't till after the intro scene that he did it, where it's like, oh, you're subverting my expectations of what every other film before it has been. It's like, you thought this was going to start with a dream sequence? No, this horrible, unrealistic situation is real this time.
Yeah, it's like, it's also from Casino Royale. It's him ordering a martini, and they ask if he says wants it shaken or stirred, and he says, "Do I look like I give a damn?" And it's hey, you like tradition? Fuck off.
Yeah, except it's Bring It On, where probably 14 people in the world realize this tradition is being broken.
Yeah,
and
then also every film ends with a song playing and the cast kind of dancing and singing to it, usually over top of some bloopers as well. And this one's just ends with this message to cheerleaders of the world, we salute you, over top of...
And it's up for too short of a time. I didn't finish reading the sentence before it disappeared off the screen. I was like, I'm sorry, I'm not rewinding.
Yeah, no, it ends with a tribute that you would expect firefighters to get. It ends with we know you work hard and you've never had your moment in the spotlight, but here it is, we salute you. But it's to people that do flips and shit.
All right,
I'm sorry, I should know better than to refer to cheerleaders like that, now that I know that they are real people and they come from all walks of life.
Three-dimensional. So what did you think of these films? How would you rank them? If you were to say best or worst, or best to worst, let's go. Let's go! Awesome! Oh, wow! What would you rank them in that order?
The first one is the best by a stupidly wide margin.
Sure.
The first one is actually a pretty decent film, and especially for its time and for what it sets out to achieve. Yep. It's good. There's a few different ways you could rank these. I'm going to go on... if you forced me to rewatch one of them, which order I would do it in. Mm-hmm. So I think maybe I would go the third one next, which is the Hayden Panettiere one. Mm-hmm. And then... let's go the second one, Bring It On Again, and then I'm going to go worldwide #cheersmack, because even though it's real bad, I think it's kind of the most rewatchable. It's quite rewatchable in a way.
I'm betrayed. I feel cheer trade, as they would say, probably in these movies. This series did the whole Pitch Perfect, excuse me, well before Pitch Perfect with its... They either replace the prefixes of words with the word cheer, or in Cheersmack they do it with the word femme, which is so tangentially related to it's so stupid.
And then I'm going to go fight to the finish, which is the fifth one, because I think it wasn't too bad, but I don't really remember it, so I should rewatch it. And then I'll go In It to Win It with the shits.
Right. I would go Bring It On Again, Fight to the Finish, All or Nothing, In It to Win It, and worldwide #cheersmack. So, Roger Ebert, the famed film critic, he referred to the first film as the Citizen Kane of cheerleader movies, which is interesting because I can't for the life of me think of another cheerleading movie beyond the sequels, Bring It On.
There's a film called But I'm a Cheerleader.
Oh.
Which is Natasha Lyonne stars as a lesbian who gets sent to a straight conversion camp.
Wow. Well, apparently this is a better film than that.
I actually think it may have come out afterwards. So.
I liked the first one. I started out not liking it too much. About the middle of the movie, I was like, I don't know about this, but then it kind of won me over. But I do think one of the unfortunate problems that plague this franchise is that the first film opens with the best scene in the entire franchise.
Yeah.
It opens with the super fun cheer where they're like, ready, okay, and they do this choreographed dance, and it's a dream sequence, but it's this really cool cheer, and it's really funny, and it's got some really cool rhymes and lines in it, and then nothing else in the rest of the movies I felt were like delivered on the promise of that first opening scene.
Yeah, because the opening scene and then also the kind of like main cheer from the first one are both, I could, even before rewatching them, I could recite them from memory.
Yeah.
But none of the other ones have stuck in my head at all.
Yeah, I'm sexy, I'm hot, I'm everything you're not. Yeah, it's great. Yeah. But also, I feel like the actual cheers, they don't really happen in past like the last cheer I remember was from the third film. To me, as someone, I'm not really into dance, and it became very like watching all the different like award-winning dances that happen at the end of all of these movies. I could not differentiate between the good ones and the bad ones.
It is very. There's a lot where I'm like, I don't know if that was the best one.
Yeah, but the cheers to me were the fun part, and that's apparently not what cheerleading is, I guess.
Apparently not. The first one kind of occupies a similar sort of space to movies like Josie and the Pussycats and Riding in Cars with Boys. Which these movies, and there's probably a couple more, but I can't remember them at the moment.
Movies specifically that your sister liked.
Yeah, movies that my sister really liked growing up, and I have definitely seen all of in the past, but maybe not at one time. And I have a certain nostalgia for. Like, they're all not too bad, not too bad to good. Like, I like Josie and the Pussycats is one that I actually love that movie. I think it's great. And Riding in Cars with Boys, I haven't seen in well over a decade, so I can't really comment. But Bring It On is one that it's like I do have a nostalgia for, and I think the movie is quite clever. And if you watch, because Peyton Reed obviously directed Ant-Man, but he also did a film called Down with Love. Which, have you seen that?
No.
It stars Ewan McGregor and Renee Zellweger, and it's sort of a satire on like 60s romantic comedies and sort of that kind of era's view of romance. And if you look at it as being similar to that film, like that Down with Love does for romance what Bring It On kind of does for race, because Bring It On actually does have this quite nice story about race. That's like the subtext of it, and the two teams that sort of battle it out. But there is the subtext underneath it that it is for the Clovers. It is this rags to riches story, that where the privileged white girls.
I'm glad you brought up that, because I do think it created what I thought was the weirdest moment in the film from a screenwriting perspective. So when Torrance finds out that the East Compton Clovers aren't able to afford to take their whole team to nationals, Torrance gets her dad to sponsor the team, right?
Her dad's company,
Yeah, her dad's company to sponsor the team, which as a character beat for Torrance is real good. They unintentionally stole the Clovers' routines. This is a great way of extending an olive branch.
And it's also her saying, I don't want to win just because you're not there. I want to actually be up against the best team, and it's you guys.
Yeah. Yeah, but then the Clovers reject her offer, and as you said before, raise the money from a in-universe Oprah equivalent. And I can imagine, to me, that felt like that would have been a head scratcher for the writers for this film, because they want Torrance to develop as a character, and they want to show it, but they also wanted to avoid, in a film that has got such awesome things to say about, race and stuff like that, they want to avoid, a white savior storyline, and have the, Clovers be, their own, they can do it themselves. The problem is, I think appealing to the talk show host is just real left of field, and it's the talk show host isn't introduced earlier in the film. She's not relevant for any other parts of it. And so it annoyed me, I guess, because race is such a strong undercurrent in the film, which is great, but I feel like if it wasn't, Torrance securing the competition, her competitors' funds would be more poetic, maybe.
I like the Clovers rejecting Torrance's offer. I think that's a really strong moment. Because it's even though they do end up sort of not raising the funds themselves, I guess, or having sponsorship. The fact that it doesn't come from Torrance, I think, and that they reject that.
Yeah.
I quite like as a character moment for Isis. But I do agree with the kind of, it just comes out, it's a very Deus Ex Machina sort of comes out of nowhere to save the day. But it's more in character for the Clovers to take that route rather than accepting Torrance's handout.
Yeah. So now that we're talking about race, I thought the one of the coolest things about this series is that all of them except the last one, they actually do a surprisingly great job of talking about race and class issues as well as other forms of discrimination, which I wouldn't have expected a movie about cheerleaders to tackle necessarily. And I think it's cool that no one in the first film really brings up the fact that the Clovers are like a lower socioeconomic area and that they're predominantly African American. Like no one is like, no one really talks about that, but it's implicit in the storyline that this is the way the world is, and this is there's a it's dealt with a lot of respect, basically.
Yeah, and also it kind of turns Big Red, who is the former captain who leaves, it kind of turns her into a victim because it's clear that she stole the routines from them, knowing there's nothing they could do about it because because of the situation they're in, where they've never been able to go to nationals before.
Yeah. So I thought as well that these conversations that these films kind of have under, in between the lines is interesting because the first few films are simultaneously both like good faith messages about respecting those who are different races or sexualities than you, as well as like really problematic in a lot of ways that like a lot of older this era of comedy films, and I mean earlier as well probably, there are plenty of like off-color jokes about sex. There's a weird amount of fat shaming that,
oh my God,
that
so
most of the
much
bootylicious characters in the film endure. Like whenever they call these girls fat because they got big asses, which 2019 standards was like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, like every single time there's a character who doesn't have a flat butt, who, as two straight white 2019 males, the ones where you'd be like, that's a nice butt, they're immediately told that's disgusting, get rid of it, you're not allowed on the team.
And like, if there was ever a way to like signify the time era that these films came out in, it's these like amazing booties being called fat and like unattractive.
This is the time referred to when magazines would say flat butts are the thing, and Sir Mix-a-Lot was tired of that.
Yeah, he was. And Sir Mix-a-Lot and Bring It On, Bring It On, where it was at odds with Sir Mix-a-Lot, I guess.
The famous Bring It On Sir Mix-a-Lot feud of the early 2000s.
Yeah. So I guess my point is it's interesting to see such a concoction of good stuff and bad stuff in one film. Like, so the first film has this wonderful representation with the Clovers storyline, and it even has a few comments on homosexuality and toxic masculinity. A lot of the cheerleaders are men or boys, dudes, and some of them well, they're not men, are they? They're teenagers.
No, it's just like yeah.
Boys or dudes, if you weren't familiar with
yeah, just like covering all your bases so you don't offend anyone. Men, boys, dudes.
So some of them are gay and some of them are straight, and the ones, neither of those are like depicted as being something that's necessarily laughable, not to any big extent. Like in some of the later movies, it's like, oh, you're a male cheerleader, lol. But in like the first few, it's very like, yeah, there are male cheerleaders in real life, which is something I didn't really consider, before learning all about cheerleading culture.
Well, then you're not woke.
No, exactly. And now I am, and specifically the area of cheerleading culture. But so there's also kind of, it could be a creepy scene, it could not be a creepy scene, where one of the male cheerleaders discusses how he sometimes finger bangs one of the female cheerleaders, I should specify, while lifting her during one of their routines, and then this is later shown happening in the film. But you were talking to me before the show, and you reckon that they're together.
Well, I don't know. It's not like it's not the kind of thing that should be put in the same conversation as like in American Pie when they broadcast Shannon Elizabeth's character changing and masturbating to the whole world, or the oft talked about very creepy scene in Revenge of the Nerds. It's nowhere near anything like that. It's not out of the realm of possibility. The way that they talk about it in the film and Bring It On, that it's kind of a consensual sort of prearranged thing between these two characters because they seem very flirtatious a lot of times throughout the film. And he talks about how she never wears underwear, and there's a scene later on where she very deliberately bends over in front of him and looks at him invitingly to show it off, and then and then when the scene does happen, her face lights up, with joy, and so it does seem like it's a what's the word for like doing stuff in public?
Consensual.
But it's like they kind of
voyeuristic. They're
it's reverse voyeuristic because voyeuristic is watching stuff. But it's they kind of enjoy the thrill of doing this in front of people, and they're both in on it. It's like I don't think that's not disproven by the film and the events of the film. That's more how I read them. However, by the time we get to worldwide #Cheersmack, which has even in Bring It On in 2000, if you do read it the way you read it, there is the kind of, it was 2000, not that it's okay, but movies, that happened a lot more in movies back then. Whereas in worldwide #Cheersmack, they're just like, they take the scene, again, the idea of, inserting your fingers during a lift, and because they talk about a guy being creepy because he always does that. Mm-hmm. And it's like, okay, you're not praising the character that's doing it. And then one of them's like, yeah, but don't act like lesbian Lisa's never slipped a dig before. And it's like, as fun as the term slipped a dig is, the fact that, because it's lesbian Lisa and there's someone else that's like a disparaging kind of way to talk about a homosexual girl, and then one of them's like, yeah, that's how I lost my virginity, and it's just this casual conversation they have, and it's very like, what am I watching? How did this film come out?
Yeah, that's part of the problem I had with #Cheersmack, was that it kind of betrays the heart and soul of the previous Bring It On films, which all were very intentional. It's like whoever made Worldwide Cheersmack didn't get that the last 5 films were all about, discrimination and that kind of thing.
They saw the first one with no sound on, and they saw the scene where he's got her hand in her crotch, and then she lights up, and they're like, oh, okay, I can tell what's happening there. I'll chuck that in my one.
Yeah. It's like they thought it was a movie just about cheerleaders and not a movie about learning to love your sisters, So this kind of sex pesty stuff, it's carried over into a lesser degree into the next 2 films after the first one. And All or Nothing, it is probably a bit too much non-consensual butt pinching for my liking. That being any non-consensual butt pinching is too much for my liking. And there's also...
I like a little bit, but not too much.
There's also a plethora of racial stereotypes which have varying degrees of landing and not landing. But the second film, I thought, had a really interesting scene where one of the male cheerleaders reveals to a football player who he's talking to at like a party, he reveals that he's gay because he's like, oh, check out the blonde one. And then it reveals that he's talking about a blonde guy. And the football player laments that now he has to like kick his ass. He's like, oh, now I got to kick your ass. And again, while this is like very sad and depressingly accurate towards the attitudes of homosexuality and masculinity, in the early 2000s, and I guess leading up to the early 2000s as well. The jock in the scene, the guy, the football player, he's clearly painted as, like, rightfully as the idiot, the unreasonable one, for suddenly switching on someone just because he was getting along with, just because he found out he was gay. And in a way, like a wokish film such as Bring It On Again from this era, they're almost able to discuss these kinds of issues in a way that's a lot more frank and honest than maybe films today would. And I'm not saying that's a good thing. I'm saying it's fascinating to watch a film with its heart in the right place, navigate these topics in a time before cultural hearts and minds had shifted as much as they have now.
Yeah. What a wild discussion to be having on what we refer to as an entry-level episode of the podcast.
This is what we talk about.
This is what we always talk about.
Speaking of the second film, though, it's perhaps notable that Bring It On Again is the only Bring It On film to be set post-high school. It's the only one where they go to college. And this brings up a similar query we had to one we had when we were watching Revenge of the Nerds, which is, are university or college like cliques really as cutthroat as high school cliques? I feel like they just wouldn't be. But I also can't imagine why. The idea of a sports team at a tertiary, it's like, institution is weird to me anyway, I guess.
Yeah, well, it's a huge thing. Obviously, there's like college football in the States, which is like a massive thing. But I guess because of scholarships as well, that it's like some people are only here because they're good at this one thing.
Yeah. All right.
But I mean, that is, again, me not knowing an awful lot about this because I didn't even go to the New Zealand equivalent of what this is, so...
do you know, I was thinking about this the other day as good podcast fodder. Do you know, and you're going to laugh and you're going to believe this, in year 8, I went to the like athletics day zones. I was one of the top sprinters in my school. I didn't want to be. I just happened to be faster than everyone else. And I went to the zones where I came last in every single event that I took part in.
Because I'm one of because of where my birthday falls, I'm one of the youngest in my year. So it's like the cutoff is if your birthday's before like the end of March, you're in this year, and mine's like start of February. So it's there was only like 2 or 3 people younger than me in my year kind of thing. But I once qualified for zones for athletics, which for if you don't know is like you have like athletics day at school, and then they have like regionals, I guess, where you know the top of everything of each kind of sport or each athletics kind of thing versus each other. I presume I never got to go, but I did once qualify for I think discus, but I was too young to go because like it was year 5 or whatever, like is the year that you should be able to go, but I wasn't yet 10, you know? Yeah. So it was fucking bullshit.
Bring It On All or Nothing, the third film in the series. As iconic as I think this one has become, it's almost the second most famous one, I feel.
Yeah, because of Hayden Panettiere and Rihanna.
Panettiere, and Rihanna. I don't know how much I like this. Like, there's a lot of... Talking about like the problems and issues with the series, there's a lot of white characters talking like non-white characters. That's played off as a joke. It's very cringy. You see Hayden Panettiere crumping and being tough. It's not something I ever want to see again. Oh my god,
the cringiest scene in the entire fucking film though is the introduce yourself scene.
Hey Richard.
Yeah.
Introduce yourself.
Hell no.
Introduce yourself.
Okay.
That's how it goes.
I'm Richard and I'm crumping. That's how it goes. So it's like the African American team versus the white team. And so it's like, obviously crumping and that kind of, but then when Hayden Panettiere does it and it's like, you're just this skinny little white girl and it looks so strange. And it's like supposed to be this super threatening moment. And it's so strange. And it's like, they do it. They have like they do it like 3 times or whatever. And then they sit down. The other team, goes home with their tail between their legs. And I messaged you and I was like, imagine thinking you'd owned someone by doing that. Imagine being like, walking home from that being like, yeah, that felt really good. Like, I don't think they're going to come back here.
Yeah. Bring It On All or Nothing, I feel, was also the pop cultural zenith of bad screenwriters thinking that teenage girls talked in instant messenger acronyms way more than they actually did. So this is full of like LOL. One of them was like, I don't think so. IDTS, and they talk like that. And it's like, this is a surefire way for your film to not feel real.
Yeah.
This is a bold decision.
There was a girl at my high school who I once told her she spoke like a 40-year-old man trying to catfish someone or like trying to pose as a teenage girl.
Yeah, that's exactly what it's like.
It's so weird. It's weird hearing that come out of a teenage girl.
This was 2006.
Yeah.
But, let's move on to talking about In It to Win It. Bring it on, In It to Win It, the fourth film in the series. And up until Cheer Smack was by far my least favourite film we'd watched so far. This was such a tiring wreck of a film. I don't have too much to say about it. One of the things I wanted to bring up was that it has one of the most unreasonable mean-spirited things that I've ever seen a protagonist in a film do, or at least in a puff piece film like this, where you're not supposed to have too much trouble thinking that the main character's a good guy. So as we said before, it's set at a camp, and when in one scene, the love interest, whose name is Penn, he's a male cheerleader from the opposing team from Carson, who is the protagonist. He reveals to her that he actually has real rich parents, and he lied about going to cheer camp and instead opted to get a scholarship or something like that to avoid outing himself as a cheerleader to his dad, right? So this is legitimately I would probably not tell people about this, you are from privilege and you use scholarship money to get yourself into a camp because you're too scared to tell your parents. It's good stuff. It's not a bad storyline at all.
Good stuff.
And then, so as we said before as well, the main kind of driving force of this film is that the cheer stick, which is a cheerleader's MacGuffin. Spirit stick, sorry. It's if you drop it, you get bad luck. If you lose it, you get bad luck. It goes missing when it's in Carson's possession, I guess, and so everyone's in heaps of trouble. And when they first find out that it's missing, in front of both Penn's team and her team, she just tells everyone that because she thinks he stole the spirit stick. So she's like, "Well, why didn't you tell them how you really got here?" And I was like, holy shit, that's so hardcore that she would just turn on this guy she was about to kiss and then tell everyone that he had cheated his way in and oh my gosh, it was breathtaking.
For me, the bar of that kind of thing happening in a movie has been set, and specifically this type of movie as well, exactly what you're talking about, has been set so high that something like that doesn't even faze me anymore. And if you'll allow me to go on a little tangent, I'll tell you what it is.
Please do.
So in the 2017 Power Rangers movie, Naomi Scott, who is the pink Power Ranger, who is now playing Jasmine in the new live-action Aladdin remake, her plot in this film, so we meet her because her two best friends tell her, actually, we don't want to be friends with you anymore. And we're heartbroken for this character we've just met. And then they explain why they don't want to be friends with her anymore. It's because Naomi Scott spread nude pictures of one of them around the school as some kind of prank or whatever. And she speaks about it later on in the film, where she says, I remember sitting in a meeting with her dad and he had to look at the photos, and I remember thinking that was so horrible. And so, fair enough, they don't want to be friends with you anymore. And then, so the first scene we meet this character, she cuts off her, I guess, signature long hair, and then she's revealed coming down the stairs with short hair, and everyone's like, damn, you've changed. And you're like, oh, it's that girl I've known for 20 seconds. And then later on in the movie, when she's a full-on Power Ranger, she drops a car on top of the car of those two girls, and it's like, that'll show you, bitches. And it's like, you are 100% in the wrong. Since your introduction, I have not felt an ounce of sympathy for you. And so this poor girl has had private nude photos that she shared with her boyfriend shown around her entire and the entire school in front of her family, disgraced her name, and now her car's been crushed, and this is supposed to be some kind of victory for the pink Power Ranger. It's actually disgusting. Even seeing trailers for Aladdin, I'm like, I don't like you, Jasmine. And it's one of the most bafflingly stupid decisions I've ever seen in a plot, and it's exactly the type of thing you're talking about. And it's ruined film for me. Not the film, it ruined film.
That's how good Bring It On all in It to Win It is that we spent most of our time talking about a different movie. So to just race on through like a madman set on fire to the fifth film in the series.
Or to race on through like Alexander Jones at the athletics zones.
Yeah, very true. So slowly, and as I do it, realize it was a bad idea to even be here. So Bring It On, fight to the finish. Now, maybe it's just because I'm still recovering from watching the MCU, but is fight to the finish the Black Panther of the Bring It On series?
Yeah, I mean, it was the only one nominated for Best Picture.
So, it's the only film in the series to have people of color as the central characters. Like, the main character is Latina. And
Christina Milan.
Yep, their race also plays, like, an important part or their place as minorities in society plays an important part because some of them are, like, prejudiced against specifically because of their race by the bad guys, the evil cheerleaders. And, at one point they get like, one of the most weirdest things about this movie is that, so it's a girl, she goes to a new school, becomes a cheerleader, and the way she like makes her cheer team better is that she gets her friends from her old school to transfer to her new school, which is a weird thing to
like
do,
in
and a
Black
weird
Panther.
thing to, yeah. but they get, my point is that they get essentially deported from the school, and like, I'm not being insensitive, that's the terminology used in the film to draw like parallels to that thing. So I think maybe that's why I liked it, and I think this would have been, I think Fight to the Finish should have been a good model going forward to focus on. If Bring It On is like what you think of when you think of a cheerleader, it'd be cool if the sequels were about what you don't think of when you think of a cheerleader necessarily.
Yeah,
like people
yeah,
from
that's a good
other
point.
races or other sexes or other sexualities,
Yeah, there should have been one of these with a male cheerleader lead.
You say that and then you go, oh, but it's Bring It On. It's kind of like a girl power series, and I don't want it's like, now there's a boy as the main character.
The only person to deliver the title line in their first film is actually a man.
What does he say?
He says, "Bring it on, butt plug."
She's Peyton Panettiere says it in All or Nothing. Most of the time when they say the title, they only get as far as Bring It.
Yeah, they
say Bring It a lot more than Bring It On.
Yeah, the cheerleaders say Bring It to each other a lot in the first film, but then, one of the football players says, "Bring it on, butt plug." And I love that that's the only, like, title drop in the first film. So the title was actually originally...
the title is Bring It On, butt plug. This was changed after...
I do just want to say that I did like Fight to the Finish, and please don't confuse me not remembering what it was about as me being in any way racist. It's
more that this is the fifth entry, and that should have been the second entry.
Yeah.
Yeah, if it was the second entry, we wouldn't have been so over it by the point we get to the first interesting one in the whole series.
Yeah.
So, all right. Worldwide #CheerSmack, the sixth and final film so far in the Bring It On cinematic universe. This is the worst one I felt, which is depressing considering how bad In It to Win It was. Like if you'd told me before I watched Worldwide #CheerSmack that this is worse than In It to Win It, I'd be like, I'm watching this tomorrow then. I was so tired when I watched this film.
Yeah.
So this film being, the first one in 9 years, 2017, it brings Bring It On into the modern era with social media playing a big role. And in my episode plan here, I've written social media where I've made every second letter lowercase.
Nice.
Lowercase, uppercase. It's like social media, like the SpongeBob meme. And yeah, I mean, despite being the newest one, I feel like it has the least to say regarding race or sexuality, which was present in all the previous films, as we mentioned.
Yeah.
And what kind of a background... this is my biggest question about this film. I forgot I didn't put a sentence break, and it's a different talking point here. Forgive me. We're getting to the end. What kind of background does a person have to be both a good enough cheerleader to impress like people on a global scale, as well as being proficient enough of a hacker that you can literally play videos on other people's phones, like, you know, without them opening it up?
Yeah, that whole like trope.
It's so contrived, and it's like it's such a rudimentary understanding of internet terrorism, and you know, like this felt like a school play or like a drama performance.
It's such a because you watched this when you were tired at night. I watched this on my first sick day this millennium. I haven't taken a sick day in 19 years, and I took a sick day on Friday. And fuck, what a way to spend it. I was like lying on the couch when I'm just like, I can't be fucked doing anything, and it's like this is the only stimuli I have, and it's like, oh my god. I'd rather be at work infecting everyone else with my cold, but yeah, this was a very difficult film to get through, but also like it made it feel like a fever dream where I was like, what
the best kind?
Yeah, what the hell? Because I actually had a fever, and I was like, what the hell is going on? Because the opening scene is so obviously just the typical dream sequence that every film starts with, and then it's not, and I was like, what is happening? And I was like, the whole film has to be revealed to be a dream. That's the only way they can say this. And then there's a dream sequence halfway through, and it's like...
And it's so bad. And she does a cheer. Destiny, the main character, does a cheer in her backyard with a cheer squad, and then she falls over, and that's the embarrassing thing. She falls over, which I'm sure happens in cheerleading rehearsals all the time, in front of her friends onto grass in front of no audience, and that's the like devastating moment.
And that's the wake up sweating. Like,
so the plot for this film really unravels when you think about it too much, surprisingly. So it's clear that the idea of the truth secretly being Destiny's entire team betraying her was something that was thought of after they'd already settled on the hacker storyline. Like they developed that there's the secret Illuminati of cheerleaders, and then they're like, well, here's an ending. What if it was her team the whole time? Because it's such an inefficient way to teach Destiny the lesson they're trying to teach. So they're trying to teach her that she's too controlling and that she needs to loosen up and let other people contribute to their ideas for the cheers. And it's like, this was the way you did that? And then by the end, they're like, the ringleader of the villains has become as controlling as Destiny. And one of them's like, you know, you're as bad as Destiny was. And she doesn't care, which I didn't buy because
she started the truth.
Care. You started the truth. Why would
you formed an internet terrorism group to fight the very thing that you have become.
And that sounds real poetic, and boy, does the movie try to get there. But it feels more like weak character writing than anything else. So yeah, we have learned, for new listeners, one thing you may not know about bad sequels, straight to DVD sequels like this, is I think if before you would think about it, you would say, good movies are complex, bad movies can often be too simple. But we have discovered a lot of the time on this podcast is the opposite of that. That sequels like this that come out 17 years after, or 18 years after the original straight to DVD, they're often very complicated, and that's why they're bad.
The problem with them is that they're too contrived.
Yeah, exactly.
It's always like, what's Legally Blonde about? Oh, cool, here's a very simple plot. And then what's Legally Blonde's, the straight to DVD sequel about? And it's like, strap in, because this is I don't even understand this.
The climaxes take ages to get through as well, because it's so like they've got to they set up a bunch of Chekhov's guns that then have to fire off and off and off, and it's because you really only want to set up 1 to 2 Chekhov's guns that you can fire off, but they have to contrive the story in such a way that they've got all this stuff they need to check off before the film ends.
It's such a strange phenomenon. No, it's very nice.
That's funny. That's a Chekhov's gun.
Yeah,
because you're checking off the gun.
You check it off at the end of the movie.
So looking at the series, the Bring It On franchise as a whole, I find it really interesting because I didn't really enjoy most of the films in the series. I kind of enjoyed the first one, but Not to, it's not one of my favorite movies or anything. But
Yeah.
as a whole, I really enjoyed folding these films into our repertoire, into our mythology.
Right, yeah.
Because
You love that you're now an expert on Bring It On.
I'm now an expert on Bring It On, and it feels kind of like a melting pot for a lot of other franchises we've covered. In a way, this was the best episode to open our Little Empire phase of the show, which will hopefully go forever.
Phase 2, yeah.
Yeah, with Bring It On works as an entry-level episode because it is kind of a quintessential franchise. And I looked at some of the other franchises we've covered and sort of drew parallels. So I thought it's interesting that Bring It On has got the teen movie vibes of American Pie. It's got the choreography of High School Musical and Camp Rock. It's got the sporting angle of Air Bud. It's got the girl power angle of Legally Blonde and the Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants. The systematic sequel tropes of Beethoven. There's a camp one and a fish out of water one, and and Beethoven had the road trip one and the Prince and the Pauper one. And as I said at the start, it's got the idiosyncratic formula of Final Destination with the dreams happening at the start, and which is, I know, a stretch. And lastly, it's also got the male writers and directors trying to portray realistic female character aspect that's in almost every franchise we've covered.
Yeah, are any of these directed by women?
Nah, some of them were written by women, like partially. I don't think a woman... I should probably check, but I think it's most of it is men writing female characters in a way that very much shows. In the sequels, there's a lot of women fighting over the same guy. That sort of thing.
Yeah.
And it would just be nice if this film about how cheerleaders are actually three-dimensional didn't give them such one-dimensional motivations.
Yeah.
Hey, Richard.
Yes.
And also our new listeners, I guess. One thing we talk about a lot on this podcast is the titles. If you've never listened before, I'm obsessed with titling schemes in franchises, and so we make a point whenever we cover a new franchise, which is every 2 weeks, if you missed that, to talk about the titles if they're particularly interesting. And in terms of titles, the Bring It On films kind of feel like they can be compartmentalized into 3 different sections. I'd say Bring It On and Bring It On Again are like, yep, that's a scheme. That's your duo. It's the title, and then continuing the sentence that the title was a part of maybe once.
Yeah.
Then All or Nothing, In It to Win It, and Fight to the Finish are all like common phrases within sporting, I guess.
Yeah.
And they're all pretty interchangeable. They all mean the same thing, basically.
Yeah.
And you could, it's kind of confusing if you don't, like if there were more than 3, I would have such trouble like remembering which one's which.
I already have trouble remembering what one's.
Yeah, exactly. And then worldwide, #CheerSmag is obviously
one of the worst titles we've ever come across.
We've ever covered on this podcast. According to the blooper reel, this is something you pointed out to me, according to the blooper reel for Bring It On All or Nothing, when they put the clapperboard in front of the screen, the original title for the film was Bring It On Yet Again. So this is the third film. Bring It On Yet Again, which is a terrible title.
No, I love that. I fucking love that, man. Yeah.
I think using again once is fine in the first film, but whenever you ever heard yet again used in a context that wasn't someone being like, yet again, like it sounds like the filmmakers are sick of it.
It's weird that you've now switched to saying again, because yet again. Sounds really strange. Yet again, for me anyway. For my ears, for my refined palate of my ears. But yeah, I would love if these films got just silly with that, because there's I used to have this like Simpsons compendium, which was like so the first one was called like The Simpsons: A Complete Guide to Your Favorite Family kind of thing, and there was like seasons 1 to 10 or whatever, and then they had to keep releasing them as they made more episodes. And it was like The Simpsons, and then The Simpsons Forever, then The Simpsons Beyond Forever, and then The Simpsons One Step Beyond Forever. And it's like, I love the idea of like making all these like things that sound like final, and then having to keep adding to them. So it's like, I would love if it was like, bring it on again, bring it on yet again, bring it on a 4th time, bring it on
You're not gonna
one
believe
last
this.
time, bring it on another last time, like.
And I guess there's also maybe you could argue there's a problem in the fact that these are all new stories with new characters.
Yeah, they're not actually bringing it on again.
I'm sure that's why they changed it. One of the main reasons they changed it from yet again is that it's not yet again for these characters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would love to see the alternate universe where they had to stretch 6 titles out of just going one step further. That's so funny to me.
Would you have liked Bring It On Forever or Bring It On Ultimatum?
Bring it on, Genesis.
Bring it on back now, y'all.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like the idea of leaning into the camp element of having to do that.
The camp element from In It to Win It?
The camp.
So another section that we do on this show when the situation calls for it is a little section called Dumb IMDb Trivia.
Ooh, very nice.
Where we scour the IMDb trivia boards of these films to find what user-submitted garbage we could find. Because like Wikipedia, IMDb is user-submitted. You can submit a piece of trivia yourself if you wanted to. And it's less policed than Wikipedia. So you get some pretty stupid like shit takes or like a dash of opinion chucked in there or a bit too much personality and what should be like an objective wording of a fact about this film or something like that. So I found one piece of dumb IMDb trivia and it's from Bring It On All or Nothing, and it says, though not a stranger in front of the camera, this movie marks the feature film debut for Rihanna. But it would take another 6 years before she would really surprise audiences by appearing almost unrecognizable as a sailor following all the rules in her next film, Battleship.
Following all the rules?
Yeah, it like describes her character in a way like if you were reading the character bio written by the film's marketers. It's not like she follows like a rebellious sailor, I guess opposite of rebellious, but a by the book sailor. It's like a sailor who follows all the rules.
Yeah, I've never heard it. I've never heard follows. Like I've heard, and she's breaking all the rules. Like I've heard that, but I've never heard, and she follows all the rules.
I would hope a sailor on a battleship follows all the rules.
Rihanna is a sailor in the movie Battleship. And she hasn't acted in 8 years.
Yeah, so that's the only piece of dumb IMDb trivia
it was suitably dumb.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad that you found it suitably dumb because that's all it is.
Because you are suitably dumb.
So another section that we do, a segment that we do on the show, is we tweet someone. Richard, it's called Ask Everyone 2019. And it would be very, it used to be a hashtag Ask Everyone 2019, but that would now feel quite hypocritical after just making fun of Cheer Smack for an hour and a half. So I thought it would be interesting to tweet Billy Woodruff, who's the director of Bring It On Again. Sorry, the point of this segment is to see if we can score an interview with someone who worked on the film, and that can be its own episode in the future. Usually we try to find someone who's been involved with more than one project, but I thought because Billy Woodruff he directed Bring It On, Fight to the Finish, and all 4 Honey movies, I figured he would know maybe quite a lot about the art of sequeling, and maybe we could watch Honey in a special episode leading up to it. So this is what I'm tweeting him. I'm saying, hey, at Billy Woodruff, we're a New Zealand podcast which focuses on the art of film franchises. Would you be keen to join us for an interview via Skype discussing your work on Bring It On, Fight to the Finish, and the Honey movies?
Nice.
And I'm tweeting that now. And he's quite active on Twitter, so he might actually see it. Wow. He also directs a lot of music videos, so maybe we can talk to him about that as well. Richard, it's time for our final segment before the final segment.
Yeah, our penultimate segment.
Yeah. This segment is called Continue the Franchise, and this is where we're going to pitch our own sequels to the Bring It On franchise or any kind of follow-up in any way. Like it could be a video game, it could be a book, it could be a lollipop, whatever, just some way to cash in, make more money off the series. Before we get to it, though, there have been a couple of things of note in terms of the legacy of Bring It On going forward. There is Bring It On the Musical, which is a Broadway musical, which Lin-Manuel Miranda wrote some of the songs for.
Yeah, it was a second musical after In the Heights, I believe.
Oh, there you go. Apparently, it's pretty good. It doesn't follow.
It's
like loosely
Lin-Manuel
based.
Miranda, AJ.
It's loosely based on the first film, but not really too much based on it. And it's probably better than the films. I wouldn't be surprised if it'd be my favorite if I could get to see it.
Yeah, like same with like how Hairspray.
Yeah.
Like they should do sorry if this is your continue the franchise, but they should do a movie adaptation of the musical.
No, that isn't it. And last year, another piece of potential news for the future of Bring It On, a tweet started circulating calling for a Bring It On film to act as a soft reboot with Gabrielle Union, who plays Isis, the captain of the Clovers in the first film, to reprise her role as the new coach. Gabrielle Union retweeted it and was like, ooh, yeah, let's do this. And someone wrote a blog about it. Hooray.
Okay, that would be cool. Yeah, it'd be cool to go back to...
Bring it on back to the beginning.
Yes, bring it on back to you, to y'all.
Is that you'll continue the franchise?
Like because to go back, I feel like the Clovers is an untapped sort of sequel.
Yeah, it's the only time like the second most important team in a Bring It On movie wasn't the villains.
Yeah, well, they kind of are, but then you learn to love them.
Yeah, but you learn to love them earlier in the film than you sometimes you never learn to love the bad guys in the other films. And Bring It On 1's also the only film where the main characters don't win the competition at the end.
Yeah.
And don't deserve to win.
Yeah.
Yeah. So is that your one?
No, that's not my one.
Tell me it.
Although it's not much longer than that. So I'm not too proficient in the rules of cheerleading. However, I'm pretty sure there isn't a rule that says dogs can't be cheerleaders.
Oh my God.
So... A franchise that we famously covered on this podcast is the Earbud franchise, which consists of it's a very big franchise, but the original franchise of it has 5 films, each with the dog Buddy playing a different sport. And I'd like to see him have a go at cheerleading, and you could either call it Cheerbud or like Earbud, give me a woof.
I love it. Very cool.
And so, yeah, it's about a dog who does cheerleading. And you know what? It bugs me that none of these films have been directed by a woman. So Cheerbud is going to be directed by a dog.
A classic bait and switch.
Yeah, that's comedy. Yeah, so...
Nice.
Yeah, because I think a dog would be a good cheerleader. Imagine if, like, before a sports game...
They already are.
Everyone just came... Like, dogs just came out and they were like, just look at these dogs for 5 minutes to get excited about your team.
Yeah. But inexplicably, they decide to not have the dog be the top of the pyramid, and so the dog's having to hold up one of the humans. It can't bend its arms that way. Cool. Well, I had a couple of ideas for continuing the franchise. I had one that I was like, oh, I'll do this, and then I came up with something way better. So my first idea was called Bring It On Endgame, which was the most ambitious crossover in film history, where all the teams, the Toros, the Rebels, the Jets, they all...
Flamingos.
Yeah, they all end up at the same nationals together, and I was like, Kirsten Dunst can come back for a cameo. But no, I'm not going to do that, Richard.
Well, that's a pretty high bar. I'd love to see what you came up with. It's better than that.
My continued franchise is called Bring It On, You Beauty. It is a New Zealand-based Bring It On film, which focuses on New Zealand cheerleaders. And Richard, you might be like, well... See, I'm a little confused at this because cheerleading culture is not very prominent in New Zealand. Our sports teams don't have, our high school sports teams don't have cheerleaders. The only cheerleaders we really have are for like our professional like rugby players.
Yeah, we've got like dance squads more.
Yeah. And Richard, I fucking went to high school with one, and I messaged her and asked her about the Bring It On movies. And so I'm using her information to craft this sequel. So thank you. Shout out to Ruby, who I went to high school with. She's the spitting image of Hayden Panettiere, and I hadn't spoken to her.
And image, I think you'll find.
I apologize. I haven't spoken to her since high school ended, and I messaged her out of the blue and said, "Hey, congratulations on getting married recently. Have you seen Bring It On?" So she's seen all 6 films.
What the fuck?
So yeah, she's seen all 6 of them. She said her favourite is the first one. She says whether that's because it's the original or the fact that after the first one, some of the storylines seem to be grasping for ideas. Also, it is iconic as an early 2000s film, which is probably some of the appeal. And she said the second one was rubbish, and I was surprised they kept going, but the third one was slightly better. So I asked her, what exactly is it that your cheerleading career involves, and how is it different or similar to what is depicted on Bring It On? So this is kind of the basis for Bring It On. You Beauty. She said, being in New Zealand, the difference in that is that I was contracted to what I was contracted to do was extremely different to these movies for halftime performances. Our routines consisted of dance, and each performer was dance trained as opposed to a cheerleader. It is growing in popularity in New Zealand, however, but competitive American-style cheerleading only started around 2003, and unlike America, there are less males interested in the sport, so here you see more females at the base of formations. Sounds like New Zealand male culture. Maybe that can be what our film's about, is like maybe there is a male cheerleader. Maybe it can...
Played by Julian Dennison.
And maybe it can tackle some of the problems that New Zealand has with its toxic masculinity.
Yeah, this is the film that finally fixes all of our masculinity problems.
And I said, how accurate are the depictions of cheerleading life in the films? And she said there are some instances which are similar. For example, it becomes a huge focus of your life. You train for it outside of training hours. You spend a lot of time in rehearsals, and you put huge amounts of pressure on yourself to learn and not forget the routines. So there, the characters are they will be immersed completely, and it's not like something it is their whole life. So we're allowed to present that as being relevant to the characters. And I said, do you have any experiences with catty rivalries or superstitions or stuff like the spirit stick or anything like that? She said, I've been in the professional industry for 9 years, and there has only been one person in my time who has tried to cause trouble or a divide in the team. She did not make it back into the team, as friendship was a huge part of what we're doing because we all had to work together and we all performed. Friendship's a big part of it. So there's a theme for the film. There's, the heart of the film. In regards to the spirit stick, a friend of mine actually made one of those as a joke for our breakup party, but there's no superstition that we had, although I cannot speak for the American style of cheerleading teams.
I had a friend who was on the Blues dance squad, which is the Auckland team.
Yeah.
And I don't know if she's still doing it.
You should send her a message. Congratulate her for being married now, and send her a message and ask her how she's going. Yes, so there's my movie. Bring it on, You Beauty. You Beauty. And it's about a cheer team for a Super 12 New Zealand rugby team, and friendship's a big part of it, and there's one problem child who comes into the fray and tries to cause a divide. And there you go.
And then everyone's just like, ugh, you're not our friend.
Yeah. And you might say that's not a very good idea for a movie, but neither are most of the Bring It On sequels. So there you go.
Yeah. Oh, You Beauty. What a good continue the franchise, AJ.
Thanks, man.
All right. Is it time to move on to our final segment?
It is. So this, as we said at the start, is a segment called Franchise Roulette. Thank you for staying with us so far, and if this is your first episode, I hope you enjoyed it. So what Franchise Roulette is as we said, we got a Google Doc that has... Have you got it in front of you? How many numbers?
It has 190 film franchises on it.
And we just listed them at random, like just when we thought of them. And we also have a random number generator that is going to give us a random number, and whatever number it gives us is going to correspond to a franchise on that list, and we will be covering that in the next franchise. So, Richard, what is our number?
It is...
6. Well, before you scroll for miles looking for what franchise number 6 is, which I think is the lowest franchise number we've ever had, I would just like to remind everybody that we have a Facebook page and a YouTube channel, and we're on iTunes, we're on Acast now for Little Empire, and we have an Instagram. All of which at Cult Popture. Find us in all these places. Give us a like or a subscribe or a follow. We're on Twitter as well. Or you can email us and tell us your thoughts at cultpopturemedia@gmail.com. We do fan mail episodes every couple months now, so your feedback will probably be said aloud on this podcast if you leave it. Richard, what is franchise 6?
So, very fittingly, it's a similar franchise to the one we've just covered. It is a 4, soon to be 5 film franchise, actually, which started in the early 2000s. And it is a Cinderella story.
Oh, God. We always get such similar ones right next to each other. It's like, God damn it, I want to...
So, a Cinderella story, another Cinderella story, Cinderella story, Once Upon a Song, a Cinderella story, If the Shoe Fits, and a Cinderella story, Christmas Wish, has just finished filming.
Wow, we've even got future content guaranteed by this episode. My goodness.
Look forward to that, us covering the Hilary Duff, Chad Michael Murray.
Were they in the sequels?
No, they're not. I know the sequel has Selena Gomez, and then one has
okay.
Lucy Hale.
Oh, okay. Yeah, okay. Sweet. That's funny that we're doing 2 franchises in a row where it's like, bring it on again. Cinderella Story, another Cinderella Story. It's like this real like tongue-in-cheek way of naming your sequel.
Yeah.
Wow, there it is, dude. What an exciting... We barely ever get to do franchise roulette these days, and I'm glad that we...
And this is the one that we got. But also, it's funny, that's the 6th franchise we thought of. Should also mention, before we go, check out our Patreon if you love... the concept of this podcast. On our Patreon at the moment, we get we let our patrons who pledge $1 or more decide every second franchise we cover. So after Cinderella Story, we'll be covering a Patreon suggested franchise, so you can suggest whatever you want. But also, if you are joining this and if you just sort of found the podcast and you see that ages ago we did an episode of something you like, we've currently got a poll up there because we're going to be doing again, I've explained this terribly, we're going to be covering a franchise that we've already covered in our first year of the podcast. So yeah.
Yep.
Fun. Check that out. That's for $1 and up patrons. You can decide our fate, whether you thought we covered Back to the Future too early or you want to put us through Freddy versus Jason again.
Yeah.
The choice is in your hands.
All right. Thank you for listening, everybody. We hope you enjoyed it, and we will see you next week for another discussion about something fun, pop cultural, and we will see you a week after that for the Cinderella Story. We plan our episodes 2 weeks in advance here.